Sarah Chen walked into the biggest room she had ever seen. The walls stretched up so high that she could not see the ceiling. Strange lights floated in the air, casting colors that Earth had no names for. This was the heart of the Galactic Council, and she was the first human to ever stand here. 12 different alien races sat in a circle around her. Some looked like giant insects with too many arms. Others were made of what seemed like living crystal that sang when they moved. A few appeared to be clouds of energy that somehow held their shape. At the center sat something that hurt to look at directly, a being of pure thought called Vexathala. Sarah had spent 3 years traveling to reach this place. Earth's best scientists had worked day and night to build the ship that brought her here. Every human on the planet was watching through the cameras on her uniform. This was humanity's chance to join the galactic community. "We greet the young species from the third planet," Vexathala's voice echoed inside Sarah's head rather than through her ears. "You have traveled far to reach us." Sarah stepped forward. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Humanity requests membership in the Galactic Council. We wish to trade, learn, and contribute to the peace you have built among the stars." A sound filled the room that took Sarah a moment to recognize. They were laughing. All of them. The crystal beings made musical chimes. The insect creatures clicked their mandibles in rhythm. Even the energy clouds flickered in what seemed like amusement. "Peace," repeated one of the insect queens, her voice coming through a translator device. "The humans speak of peace. How curious." Vexathala's attention pressed down on Sarah like a weight. "Child species, we know of your kind. We have watched your world for many cycles. You wage war upon yourselves constantly. Your oceans run red with blood. Your skies burn with the fire of your weapons. You speak of peace while your hands drip with violence." Sarah kept her voice steady. "We have conflicts, yes, but we also have love, art, music, and the desire to be better than we are. Every species must have grown through difficult times." "Some species, perhaps," said another council member, this one looking like a tree made of metal. "But you are different. You are chaos given form. You turn everything you touch into conflict." The council members began listing humanity's crimes, wars throughout history, the nuclear weapons, the way humans treated their own planet. Each point hit Sarah like a physical blow, but she stood straight and listened. "We have prepared an offer for your species," Vexathala announced when the list ended. "It is generous beyond what you deserve. You may return to your system and remain there for 1,000 of your years. During this time, we will observe your development. If you can prove that you have overcome your violent nature, we may consider allowing you limited contact with civilized worlds." 1,000 years, Sarah repeated. "You want to lock humanity in our own system for 1,000 years? It is for the good of all," the crystal beings sang. "Peace must be preserved. Your kind would shatter the harmony we have built." Sarah took a deep breath. Back on Earth, the leaders of every nation had debated what to do if this happened. They had hoped for acceptance but planned for rejection. Now came the moment of truth. "I appreciate your offer," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, "but I have a counter-proposal." The room fell silent. Even the floating lights seemed to dim. "Humanity requests immediate membership with full rights and responsibilities. We will contribute to the peace and prosperity of all member worlds. We will share our knowledge and learn from yours. We will be partners, not prisoners." The silence stretched on. Then Vexathala spoke, and Sarah could hear the amusement in the mental voice. "And if we refuse this proposal?" Sarah looked around the room, meeting what she hoped were the eyes of each council member. "Then humanity will consider all council territories open for expansion and resource gathering. We will take what we need to grow and thrive among the stars." The laughter that erupted this time was even louder than before. The insect queen's clicks turned into what sounded like screeching. The energy clouds pulsed so brightly that Sarah had to shield her eyes. Even Vexathala seemed to ripple with mirth. "Expansion?" the metal tree being said when the laughter died down. "Child species, you have one world and a handful of primitive ships. The Council commands 12 stellar empires spanning thousands of systems. Our fleets could turn your sun into cosmic dust. Your weapons are sticks and stones compared to ours," added another member that looked like a living statue. "Your fastest ships would take centuries to reach our nearest outposts." Vexathala's presence grew stronger, pressing against Sarah's mind. "Little human, You stand alone in a room of beings that have lived for millennia. Your entire species is younger than some of our individual members. What could you possibly threaten us with? Sarah smiled, and something in that expression made the laughter falter. You've been watching us for how long, studying our history, learning about our wars and conflicts? Long enough to know what you are? Vexathala replied. Then you should know that humans don't bluff, Sarah said quietly. When we make a threat, we mean it. When we go to war, we finish it. When we say, we'll do something, we do it. The room grew quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. Less amused, more thoughtful. You have 30 standard days to consider our offer, Vexathala announced finally. Return to your ship. Contemplate the wisdom of accepting our generous terms. The council has spoken. As Sarah turned to leave, she heard the metal tree being whisper to its neighbor. Surely they cannot be serious? One primitive species against the entire council? Sarah paused at the doorway and looked back. Vexathala, you said you've studied our history. Tell me in all your watching, did you ever see humanity surrender when we believed we were right? She didn't wait for an answer. As the massive doors closed behind her, Sarah activated her communication device. This is Ambassador Chen to Earth Command. The Council has rejected our membership request. Initiate Protocol 7. Back in the chamber, the Council members discussed the strange little human who had dared to threaten them. They agreed that humanity needed to learn respect. Some suggested a show of force to remind the humans of their place. Only Vexathala remained quiet, thinking about the ambassador's final question. In all their observation of humanity, had they ever seen them surrender? The answer troubled the ancient being more than it cared to admit. The answer was no. Humans didn't surrender. They adapted, they overcame. They found ways to win that no one expected. But surely, against the might of the Galactic Council, even human stubbornness would have to give way to reality. Vexathala decided to increase surveillance on the human system, just to be safe. The 30-day countdown began. 29 days passed in the human solar system with absolute silence. The Galactic Council's monitoring stations picked up nothing. No radio signals, no quantum communications, no faster-than-light transmissions. Even the basic electromagnetic radiation that every technological civilization produced had stopped. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from existence. On the Council's surveillance ship Eternal Watcher, Captain Zikthor stared at his instruments in confusion. The four-armed insectoid officer had been monitoring Earth for 3 cycles, documenting human activities for the Council's files. He had grown used to the constant chatter of human communications, the busy movement of their ships, the energy signatures of their cities. Now there was nothing. "Run another deep scan," he ordered his crew. "Check all frequencies." The results came back the same as the previous 100 scans. Empty, silent, dead. "Perhaps they have accepted their fate," suggested his second officer, a crystalline being, whose voice rang like distant bells. "The humans may have realized the futility of resistance." Zikthor wasn't convinced. In his years of watching the humans, he had learned that they rarely did anything quietly. Their communications networks buzzed constantly. Their ships moved between planets like busy insects. Their cities blazed with light even during their planet's night cycle. This silence was not natural for them. On the Council homeworld of Nexus Prime, the leaders gathered for their daily session. The Great Chamber hummed with quiet conversation, as members discussed trade agreements, territorial disputes, and the 1,000 small details of governing a galactic civilization. "The human deadline approaches," announced Vexathala, its mental voice reaching every mind in the room. "Tomorrow marks 30 standard days since their ambassador departed. Have they responded to our generous offer?" asked Council Member Thrixal, whose metallic body gleamed in the chamber's light. "They have not," Vexathala replied. "In fact, they have not communicated at all. Our monitoring stations report complete silence from their system." This news caused a stir among the Council members. The insect queens clicked their mandibles in what passed for thoughtful discussion among their kind. The energy beings pulsed with curious light patterns. "Silence is better than defiance," stated Queen Commander Sileth of the Zephyrian Empire. Her serpentine form coiled elegantly in her designated space. "Perhaps they are preparing to accept our terms. Or they are planning something foolish," suggested another member. "Primitive species often respond to superior force with desperate gestures." Vexithala considered both possibilities. The ancient being had lived through countless first contacts with young species. Most followed predictable patterns. They either accepted the council's wisdom immediately, or raged helplessly for a time before giving in to reality. A few tried futile attacks that the council's defenses easily repelled. But complete silence? This was new. Increase surveillance, Vexithala commanded. I want to know what the humans are doing. On Earth, the silence was not empty at all. In secret facilities buried deep underground, humanity worked with focused intensity. Every major nation had contributed their best minds to projects that officially didn't exist. The silence above ground concealed the most ambitious military operation in human history. Admiral Sarah Voss stood in the command center of what used to be NORAD, now expanded into something far beyond its original purpose. Banks of computers processed data from thousands of sensors. Holographic displays showed ship positions throughout human space and beyond. The room buzzed with quiet activity, as technicians and officers coordinated the largest deployment of human forces ever assembled. Status report, Admiral Voss commanded. All ships are in position, reported Captain Martinez, her chief of operations. Ghost protocols are active across the entire fleet. The enemy's sensors show nothing. Good. Communications blackout is holding? Complete radio silence maintained for 29 days, Admiral. Even our civilian populations are cooperating. Every transmission is being routed through hardened cables or kept within atmosphere. Admiral Voss nodded. The communications blackout had been the hardest part to coordinate. Humans were social creatures who loved to talk, especially across vast distances. But every person on Earth and in the colonies understood what was at stake. For the first time in human history, the entire species was working toward a single goal. And the Council's monitoring ships? Still watching, still seeing, nothing. Our stealth technology is performing better than projected. Even at close range, their sensors can't detect our signatures. The stealth technology had been humanity's greatest breakthrough. While the Council had watched humans fight each other, they had missed the parallel development of technologies designed to hide from observation. Military necessity had driven human innovation in ways the peaceful Council couldn't understand. Every human ship was now wrapped in fields that bent space-time around their hulls, making them invisible to conventional sensors. They absorbed electromagnetic radiation instead of reflecting it. They generated no heat signatures, no gravitational disturbances, no subspace ripples that would reveal their presence. To outside observers, the human fleet had simply ceased to exist. Time to target positions? Admiral Voss asked. All task forces report ready, Admiral. We can begin operations the moment you give the order. Admiral Voss looked at the master display showing the positions of human forces throughout Council space. Red dots marked key infrastructure targets. Blue dots showed the invisible human ships waiting nearby. In 30 years of military service, she had never seen anything like this. Maintain positions, she ordered. We wait for the deadline. Across the galaxy, other human commanders received similar orders. Captain Webb's task force hung invisible near the trilithium processing stations in the Vega system. Admiral Delgado's ships surrounded the agricultural worlds of the Outer Rim. Commander Zhang's frigates had positioned themselves next to critical communication relays throughout Council space. None of the Council forces stationed at these locations detected anything unusual. Their sensors showed normal space traffic, normal energy readings, normal everything. The idea that hundreds of human warships could be lurking just beyond their detection range was impossible, according to their understanding of human technology. On the final day, Captain Ziegthor filed his last report before the deadline expired. Human activity remains at 0, he transmitted to Council headquarters. No ships detected leaving their system, no increase in energy production, no military preparations visible from orbit. It appears the human leadership has chosen to ignore our deadline entirely. The report puzzled the Council members. They had expected either acceptance or defiant posturing. Instead, humanity had simply gone quiet. Perhaps their primitive communications have failed, suggested one member. They may be trying to respond but lack the technology to reach us. Or they are sulking like children, added another. Young species often react to adult decisions with stubborn silence. Only a few voices expressed concern. In my experience, Queen Commander Syleth said carefully, when a predator goes silent, it usually means they are hunting. But her words were drowned out by the majority opinion. The humans were clearly overwhelmed by the Council's superior power. Their silence was the silence of defeat. As the deadline hour approached, Vexathala prepared the final ultimatum. If humanity did not respond within the next few hours, the Council would take corrective measures. A small demonstration of force to remind the humans of their place in the galactic order. The ancient being never imagined that at that very moment, invisible human ships were already moving into attack positions around 17 different Council systems. The silence was about to end. At exactly 30 standard days after Ambassador Chen's departure, the attacks began. They started simultaneously across 17 star systems, timed to the microsecond despite the vast distances involved. Human fleets materialized as if from nowhere, their stealth fields dropping in perfect coordination. What had been empty space moments before suddenly swarmed with sleek warships bearing the blue and white insignia of the Terran Expeditionary Force. Captain Marcus Webb watched his tactical display as his task force surrounded the trilithium processing stations in the Vega system. The massive orbital platforms hung like metal flowers around the system's gas giant, harvesting the rare element that powered faster than light travel throughout Council space. All stations, this is Captain Webb. He broadcast on all frequencies. You are being seized by the Terran Expeditionary Force. Do not resist and no harm will come to you. Evacuate all military personnel to designated safe zones immediately. The response was chaos. Emergency alarms wailed across the processing stations. Council military ships scrambled to launch from their docking bays, only to find human vessels, already positioned to intercept them. The station commanders filled the communication channels with demands, threats, and confused questions. "This is impossible," transmitted Station Commander Velthar, his mechanical voice crackling with electronic distortion. "Human ships cannot exist in this system undetected." "Yet here we are," Webb replied calmly. "You have 10 minutes to complete evacuation procedures." Webb's ships moved with surgical precision. They disabled the station's weapons with targeted electromagnetic pulses. They cut power to non-essential systems while leaving life support untouched. Most importantly, they positioned themselves between the stations and any approaching Council reinforcements. The human captain had studied these facilities for months through intelligence gathered by stealth probes. He knew exactly which systems to disable, which personnel to evacuate, and which processes to preserve. The goal was not destruction but capture. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out in 16 other systems. Admiral Rosa Delgado's task force surrounded the vast agricultural worlds that fed 3 billion Council citizens. Her ships appeared in orbit around planets covered with kilometer-wide farming complexes, automated harvest systems, and food processing centers. "People of the farming worlds," Admiral Delgado broadcast. "This is Admiral Rosa Delgado of Earth. We are taking temporary control of these facilities. All civilian personnel will be protected and cared for. Any attempt at military resistance will result in the shutdown of your food production systems." The agricultural worlds had almost no military presence. They had never needed defenses in the 1,000 years of Council peace. The few patrol boats that tried to approach Delgado's ships were disabled by precise weapons fire that left their crews unharmed, but their vessels powerless. In the outer spiral arms, Commander Zhang Wei's frigates executed the most crucial part of the operation. They seized control of the communication relays that linked different parts of Council space. These massive stations, built into asteroids and moons, carried the subspace signals that allowed instant communication across thousands of light years. Zhang's teams boarded the relay stations with military efficiency. They overwhelmed the small security forces with non-lethal weapons and took control of the communication arrays. Within hours, vast sections of Council space went dark, cut off from the central government on Nexus Prime. The brilliant strategy became clear as reports reached the Council chambers. Humanity was not trying to destroy their enemies. Instead, they were systematically dismantling the infrastructure that made Council civilization possible. No civilians died, no worlds burned, no cities fell. But suddenly, food stopped flowing to populated worlds. Energy sources that powered entire star systems fell under human control. The communication networks that coordinated trade and government across the galaxy went silent. On Nexus Prime, Vexathala struggled to comprehend the reports flooding in from across Council space. The ancient being had lived through wars of conquest, rebellions of subject species, and conflicts between Council members. But this was something entirely new. "How many ships?" Vexathala demanded of the intelligence reports. "Estimates vary," replied the military coordinator, a being of living crystal whose song carried notes of distress. "Minimum 300 vessels, possibly twice that number." They appeared simultaneously across 17 systems with no advance warning. 300 ships? Repeated Queen Commander Syleth. The humans barely had 50 vessels when our scouts last counted their fleet. Our intelligence was clearly incomplete, Bexthala admitted, though the words came reluctantly. They have been building in secret. The reports continued to arrive. Human forces had captured 6 months' worth of trilithium reserves. The grain, worlds that fed the core systems, were under human control. Communication was cut to entire sectors of Council space. Worse, the humans were doing it all without causing civilian casualties. They fight like us, observed Council Member Thrixall, his metallic form shifting in agitation. Precise. Efficient. No unnecessary destruction. But they fight better than us, added another member. We have not fought a real war in 3 centuries. They never stopped preparing for one. The military response began immediately. Council fleets that had maintained peace through their mere presence suddenly found themselves mobilizing for actual combat. Ships that had patrolled empty space for decades powered up their weapons and set course for human-occupied systems. But, when they arrived, they found nothing to fight. Captain Webb's task force had vanished from the Vega system, taking their captured trilithium with them. Admiral Delgado's ships had disappeared from the agricultural worlds, leaving behind disabled but intact facilities and confused civilian populations. Zhang's frigates had abandoned the communication relays after downloading their routing protocols and encryption keys. The human ships were gone, but the damage was done. The systems they had controlled were left in chaos. Supply lines were broken, communication networks remained down. The smooth operation of Council civilization ground to a halt. Where did they go? Demanded Fleet Admiral Caxthul, the Council's supreme military commander. His tentacled form writhed with frustration as he studied tactical displays showing empty space where human fleets should have been. Unknown, reported his intelligence officer. They have reactivated their stealth systems. Our sensors cannot track them. The problem was worse than the Admiral realized. Human ships were not retreating to safety. They were repositioning for the next phase of operations. Their stealth technology let them move unseen through Council space, setting up new ambushes and preparing fresh targets. The Council's military found itself fighting ghosts. They would rush to defend a critical facility, only to discover that the humans had already struck somewhere else. They would set up defensive patrols only to have human ships appear behind them to capture undefended installations. For a civilization that had maintained peace through strength and deterrence, this new kind of warfare was bewildering. The Council's ships were more advanced than human vessels. Their weapons were more powerful. Their defenses were stronger. But none of that mattered if they couldn't find their enemies. They are using our own peace against us, Queen Commander Syleth observed during an emergency council session. We have grown dependent on systems that were never designed to resist this kind of attack. She was right. The Council's infrastructure had been built for efficiency and interconnection, not security. Their supply lines crossed thousands of light years, because no one had ever threatened them before. Their communication networks were open and accessible because secrecy had been unnecessary. Their military bases were located for patrol efficiency, not defense against invisible raiders. Humanity had studied these weaknesses for 30 days of silence and planned their attacks accordingly. As the first week of human operations ended, the casualty reports told a story that shocked the Council. Billions of civilians affected by food shortages and communication blackouts, trillions of credits and economic damage from broken supply chains, military forces scattered across dozens of systems trying to protect everything at once. Human casualties. 0 Council military casualties. Fewer than 100, all from accidents during hasty mobilizations. The humans were waging perfect war, achieving their objectives while avoiding the destruction that usually defined military conflict. In his email, Command Center on Earth, Admiral Voss studied the reports from her field commanders. Phase 1 was complete. The Council's economy was disrupted, their military was confused, and their communication was limited. But the real target still lay ahead. For humanity to achieve their goal, they would need to strike at the very heart of Council power. Begin Phase 2, she ordered. Target New Geneva. New Geneva floated in space like a massive jewel, its artificial surface gleaming with the lights of 50 billion inhabitants. The artificial world served as the capital of the Galactic Council, home to the greatest library in the galaxy, the most advanced research centers, and the governing bodies that maintained peace among the stars. It was also the most heavily defended location in known space. Orbital defense platforms surrounded the artificial planet like a metal constellation. Each platform carried enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. Energy shields wrapped around New Geneva in layers, creating barriers that could stop anything from asteroids to antimatter weapons. The system's outer reaches were patrolled by the Council's most advanced warships. No enemy had ever penetrated these defenses. No enemy had ever even tried. Admiral Sarah Voss stood on the bridge of the Terran Pride, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, she could see New Geneva hanging in space like a small moon. Her fleet of 60 ships held position around the capital world, having materialized from stealth just 30 minutes ago. The orbital defense platforms remained silent, their weapons powered down. The patrol fleets floated motionless in their formations. The energy shields flickered and died one by one until New Geneva hung naked in space. "Status report," Admiral Voss commanded. "All defense platforms are under our control," reported her operations officer. The cyber attack worked perfectly. Their computer systems never detected our infiltration programs. Patrol fleets? Disabled but intact. Electromagnetic pulse weapons took out their power systems without harming the crews. The planetary shields? Offline. We control the generator stations. Admiral Voss nodded. For months, human intelligence operatives had been planting computer viruses and infiltration programs throughout Council networks. The 30 days of silence had given these programs time to spread and prepare. When the human fleet dropped stealth, the capital's defenses had already been compromised from within. On New Geneva's surface, 50 billion beings went about their morning routines unaware that their world had fallen. The artificial planets, cities stretched across continents of carefully maintained parkland. Beings from dozens of species worked in harmony, their different needs met by technology that could create any environment. In the council chambers at the planet's heart, Vexithala was receiving reports from across the galaxy when the alerts began to sound. "Council leader," transmitted the defense coordinator, panic clear in its electronic voice. "We are detecting massive energy signatures in the New Geneva system." "What kind of signatures?" Vexithala demanded. "Unknown design, 60 vessels appearing from nowhere. They are human ships, Council leader. The humans have reached New Geneva." The chamber erupted in chaos. Council members who had lived for millennia without fear suddenly faced the impossible. Enemy ships in orbit around their capital world, weapons pointed at the seat of galactic government. "Activate all defenses," ordered Fleet Admiral Caxthul, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "Destroy them immediately." "Sir, we cannot," the coordinator replied. "All orbital platforms are reporting computer malfunctions. The shield generators are not responding. Our patrol fleets are dead in space." The reality of the situation settled over the council like a cold weight. Somehow, impossibly, the humans had neutralized the most powerful defenses in the galaxy without firing a shot. Admiral Voss's voice echoed through every communication system on New Geneva. Her image appeared on screens in government buildings, homes, schools, and workplaces across the artificial world. "Citizens of New Geneva," she began, her voice calm and professional. "I am Admiral Sarah Voss of the Terran Expeditionary Force. Your world is now under human protection. You are in no danger. Continue your daily activities as normal. Your government buildings are sealed, but all other functions of your society will continue unchanged." The streets filled with confused beings as the population tried to understand what was happening. Some ran for emergency shelters that had never been used. Others gathered around public screens to watch the human admiral's broadcast. Many simply stood and stared at the sky, trying to see the ships that had somehow conquered their unconquerable world. "Council leaders," Admiral Voss continued, "you have 1 hour to assemble in your chambers for negotiations. Any attempt to use military force against my ships or to evacuate government personnel will result in the immediate shutdown of your planetary life support systems." In the council chambers, the members faced a choice no galactic government had confronted in 1,000 years. Submit to negotiations with an enemy who held their capital hostage, or watch 50 billion civilians suffocate when their air recycling systems failed. "This is impossible," repeated Council Member Thrixall for the dozenth time. 50 billion people cannot be held hostage by a primitive species. "Yet here we are," Queen Commander Siloth observed. Her serpentine form coiled tightly as she considered their options. "The question is not how this happened, but what we do now." "We fight," declared another member, a being of pure energy whose form crackled with anger. "We call every fleet, every ship, every weapon in Council space. We overwhelm them with sheer force and kill 50 billion innocent beings in the process? Sci-Fi asked. Is that the legacy we want for the Council? The debate raged as the hour deadline approached. Some members demanded immediate military action regardless of civilian casualties. Others urged negotiation to protect the population. A few simply sat in stunned silence, unable to process the complete reversal of everything they had believed about human capabilities. As the time limit expired, Admiral Voss's image appeared in the Council chambers. She looked around the room with the same calm expression she had worn when Ambassador Chen first addressed these same beings. Council leaders, she said, I'm here to discuss terms. Terms? Vexathala's mental voice carried waves of indignation. You dare to demand terms while holding civilians hostage? I'm not holding anyone hostage, Admiral Voss replied. I'm holding your peace hostage. She gestured, and holographic displays filled the chamber, showing the situation across Council space. Human fleets had returned to their captured positions, once again controlling vital supply lines and communication networks. Food shipments sat undelivered in warehouses. Energy production facilities operated under human supervision. Entire sectors remained cut off from the central government. For 1,000 years you have maintained peace through strength, Admiral Voss continued. You built a civilization so interconnected and efficient that no one could threaten it without destroying themselves in the process. You created mutual dependence so complete that war became impossible. The Council members listened in growing horror as she outlined the scope of human operations. They controlled 60% of trilithium production. They had access to the communication networks of half the galaxy. They could shut down food supplies to 12 major population centers. But your strength became weakness when someone learned to wage war without destruction, Admiral Voss said. We don't want to rule your people or burn your worlds. We just want to join your community as equals. This is madness, protested Fleet Admiral Caxthul. You cannot hold an entire civilization hostage to force political changes, can't we? Admiral Voss smiled. We've been doing it for the past week. The question is how long you want this to continue. She activated another holographic display showing intelligence reports from across Council space. Human operatives had made contact with dozens of species that the Council had dismissed as primitive or unready for membership. Word was spreading that the mighty Galactic Council could be challenged and defeated. Every species you have rejected is watching this moment, Admiral Voss said. Every world you have quarantined is seeing that your power has limits. How long before others decide to follow our example? The threat was clear. If the Council continued to resist, they would face not just human opposition, but potential rebellions throughout their territory. Species that had accepted Council authority for centuries might decide that they, too, deserved a voice in galactic affairs. What do you want? Vexathala asked finally. Admiral Voss's expression never changed. The same thing Ambassador Chen requested 31 days ago. Full membership in the Galactic Council, equal voting rights, an end to humanity's quarantine, and a formal apology for your initial dismissal of our species. And if we refuse? Then tomorrow we begin redistributing the resources we've captured to species throughout the galaxy that you've deemed unworthy of Council membership. We start teaching them the techniques that let a primitive species conquer the galaxy's most advanced civilization. The chamber fell silent as the Council members contemplated their choice. Grant humanity membership and admit that their peaceful civilization could be defeated by determined opposition, or refuse and watch their carefully maintained order collapse. As dozens of species followed the human example, Admiral Voss waited patiently as the most powerful beings in the galaxy struggled with a decision that should have been simple. In the end, the choice was between pride and survival. You have 24 hours to decide, she said finally. After that, we start teaching the galaxy that there are alternatives to Council rule. The debate in the Council chambers lasted 18 hours. Vexathala listened to every argument, every proposal, every desperate attempt to find an alternative to surrender. Some members wanted to fight regardless of casualties. Others suggested trying to negotiate for lesser terms. A few proposed abandoning New Geneva and rebuilding the government elsewhere. But Queen Commander Silath spoke the truth that none of them wanted to hear. We can destroy them, she said, her serpentine form coiled in the speaking position. We have the firepower to turn their ships into cosmic dust, even if it means sacrificing 50 billion of our own people. But what happens after that? The chamber fell quiet as she continued. Every species we have rejected will know that we murdered billions to maintain our power. Every world under our protection will wonder if we would do the same to them. The humans will become martyrs, and their example will inspire others to try what they have accomplished. So we submit? Asked Council Member Thrixall, his metallic body reflecting the chamber's lights. We bow to the demands of a species we called primitive? We adapt, Syleth replied, as we have always adapted. The humans have shown us something we thought impossible. How to wage war without becoming monsters. They have held our entire civilization hostage without spilling blood. They could have burned our worlds and chosen mercy instead. Fleet Admiral Caxthel's tentacles writhed in frustration. They are still violent creatures who solve problems through force. Are they? Syleth challenged. Look at what they have done. They captured our facilities without harming the workers. They disabled our ships without killing the crews. They took our capital without hurting our people. If this is violence, it is violence perfected beyond our understanding. As the hours passed, more reports arrived from across Council space. Human forces continued to hold their positions but had made no aggressive moves. They were providing medical care to Council personnel in the captured facilities. They were maintaining life support systems on disabled ships. They were even ensuring that food supplies continued to flow to civilian populations, just under human supervision. They fight like we always claimed to fight, admitted another council member. For principles, not conquest. The final debate came down to a simple question. Was the council's pride worth more than the lives of 50 billion beings on New Geneva? Vexthala called for the vote with 6 hours remaining until Admiral Voss's deadline. The ancient beings, mental voice reached every mind in the chamber. All those in favor of granting humanity full membership in the Galactic Council. The votes came slowly. Queen Commander Selath voted yes immediately. Several others followed. Some members abstained, unable to choose between pride and pragmatism. Only 3 voted against the proposal. The measure passes, Vexthala announced. Humanity will be granted full membership with equal voting rights. The quarantine of their system is hereby lifted. But there was still one more requirement. The Council's most ancient and powerful leader stood before the assembled representatives and spoke words that had never been uttered in the chamber before. To Ambassador Sarah Chen and the people of Earth, the Galactic Council offers its formal apology. We misjudged your species and underestimated your capabilities. We welcome humanity as equals in the community of civilized worlds. Within minutes of the Council's announcement, human forces began withdrawing from their positions across the galaxy. The operations that had taken weeks to plan and execute were reversed with the same precision that had made them successful. Admiral Voss personally oversaw the return of New Geneva's defenses to Council control. Her ships backed away from the artificial planet as the orbital platforms came back online, and the energy shields reformed their protective barriers. All facilities are being returned to Council authority, she broadcast to the planetary population. Thank you for your cooperation during this transition. Humanity looks forward to working with all Council species as partners in peace. The withdrawal was as flawless as the initial attacks had been. Every captured installation was returned in perfect condition. Every disabled ship was repaired and sent home. Every ton of confiscated resources was delivered to its intended destination. But the most remarkable part came in the final reports. Human forces had controlled critical infrastructure across 17 star systems for over a week. They had held the galaxy's capital city hostage. They had disabled hundreds of military vessels and captured thousands of facilities. The total casualties from the entire operation: 0 deaths, 47 minor injuries, all treated by human medical personnel. Ambassador Chen returned to New Geneva for humanity's formal induction into the Galactic Council. The ceremony took place in the same chamber where she had been dismissed 35 days earlier, but the atmosphere was completely different. The seating arrangements had been modified to include human representatives. Translation systems were updated to handle human languages. The chamber itself had been expanded to accommodate the new members of the galactic community. As Chen took her place among the council representatives, Vexthala addressed her directly. Ambassador Chen, your species has demonstrated capabilities that we failed to recognize. How did humanity achieve what our intelligence services insisted was impossible? Chen smiled. You studied our conflicts and saw only violence. You watched our wars and missed the strategy. You observed our weapons and ignored our restraint. She gestured to displays showing the human withdrawal operations still ongoing across the galaxy. Every war we ever fought taught us something new, about logistics, tactics, and technology. Every conflict showed us how to strike precisely while avoiding unnecessary destruction. You saw the violence but missed the evolution. And the stealth technology? Asked Queen Commander Silath. Military necessity, Chen replied. When you're outgunned, you learn to hide. When you're outnumbered, you learn to strike from shadows. When you're dismissed as primitive, you learn to exceed expectations. The formal induction ceremony was brief. Humanity was granted full membership, equal voting rights, and access to all council technologies and knowledge. In return, they agreed to contribute to the common defense and abide by the laws that governed interstellar civilization. But the real changes went deeper than formal agreements. Within months, other species that the council had rejected began, requesting reconsideration of their applications. The Orion mining collectives pointed out that they had maintained peace for 2 centuries. The Rimworld Federation demonstrated technologies that rivaled council standards. Dozens of primitive civilizations suddenly seemed less primitive when viewed without preconceptions. The council found itself expanding rapidly as species that had been waiting for centuries were finally given the opportunity to join. The galaxy became more diverse, more dynamic, and arguably more interesting than it had been during the long peace. Admiral Voss attended the 6-month anniversary celebration of human membership. The ceremony took place on New Geneva in the EIEP, same plaza where 50 billion beings had watched human ships appear in their sky. Do you ever regret how we did this? Asked Queen Commander Silath, who had become one of humanity's strongest supporters on the council. Voss considered the question, as they watched children of a dozen species playing together in the artificial world's carefully maintained parks. We could have spent decades trying to prove ourselves worthy, she replied. We could have accepted quarantine and hoped that eventually you would change your minds. Instead, we chose to show you who we really are. And who are you really? A species that will do whatever it takes to protect what we believe in, but will never become the monsters we fight against. A people who understand that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in choosing not to when you could. As the celebration continued around them, reports arrived of the latest council expansion. 3 more species had been granted membership after demonstrating their readiness to contribute to galactic civilization. The galaxy was changing, becoming more inclusive and representative of its diverse populations. In her private chambers that evening, Ambassador Chen reviewed the intelligence reports that had made human victory possible. Her species had spent 30 days in silence, but those days had been filled with the most intensive military planning in human history. They had studied every aspect of council civilization, identified every weakness, planned every contingency. They had prepared for a war that could have lasted decades and cost billions of lives. Instead, they had ended it in a week, without firing a shot in anger. The final entry in Chen's mission log captured the essence of humanity's achievement. Today, we learned that the greatest victory is not defeating your enemies, but showing them that you were never enemies at all. The Galactic Council believed we were bluffing when we threatened their peace. They were wrong. We weren't threatening their peace. We were offering to help them build a better one. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time in 1,000 years, that was exactly what it needed.